Hello guys, welcome to my channel where stories filled with revenge, moral lessons, and love are told. Sit back, relax, and don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to stay updated on more incredible stories. It was a Wednesday morning, the kind where the sky looks pale and undecided, not sure if it wants to be sunny or cloudy. I was still in bed, half asleep, when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. At first, I thought it was a routine message from one of my boutique suppliers confirming a delivery. But when I lazily reached for it and unlocked the screen, I froze. The first thing that hit me was the tone cold, clipped, with none of the warmth I'd once expected from my husband. "Charlotte, I'm leaving you. Don't contact me. I've taken my share of the money. It's over." The message came from Adrian, the man I had been married to for 8 years. My eyes blinked rapidly, not because I didn't understand the words, but because they were so blunt, so final, and so cowardly. A text message? After 8 years of marriage? And my share of the money, what an interesting way to describe cleaning out our joint account overnight. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the phone against the wall. I didn't even cry. My body stayed still, but my mind was as alert as if someone had thrown a bucket of cold water over me. That's because I'd been expecting this moment. Not the text, not the exact words, but the betrayal itself. Over the past 4 months, I had noticed changes in Adrian. His late nights became more frequent, his excuses more recycled. The man who used to bring me coffee in bed on weekends now came home smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't mine. I'd catch him smiling at his phone like a teenager, and when I asked, "Who's that?" he'd mutter something about a client or a coworker before quickly locking the screen. The tipping point came 3 months ago when I discovered a receipt for a necklace tucked into the pocket of one of his blazers. I had never received that necklace. That's when my quiet preparations began. The first thing I did was speak to Mr. Collins, my family's longtime lawyer. Sitting in his office, I explained everything I'd observed and handed him photocopies of suspicious bank transactions. "Charlotte," he said, folding his hands in that steady, lawyerly way, "this is not a man who's just distracted. This is a man making plans." That was all the confirmation I needed. Over the following weeks, I opened a separate account in my name only. I moved most of my personal savings, my boutique profits, and the small inheritance from my grandmother into it. My grandmother's house, which Adrian once called that dusty old place, was transferred fully into my name. He had always dismissed my boutique as a little shop, but it was thriving and thankfully, every business account was solely mine. So, when I read Adrian's message that morning, all I felt was the tightening of a knot I had already been untying in secret. I got out of bed, showered, and brewed myself a cup of coffee. My hands were steady. I even hummed a tune as I buttered my toast. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Adrian, this time longer. "I'm in Miami for a while. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Vanessa and I just want peace. I've taken enough to start fresh. I think you'll manage just fine on your own. Vanessa." So that was her name. The younger receptionist from his office. I had seen her once at a company party petite, with a giggle that clung to men like static. That night, she had barely looked me in the eye. Peace. The word rolled around my mind like a bad joke. Was draining our account and vanishing with a younger woman supposed to be peaceful? I called Mr. Collins. "It's happened," I told him. "I take it he's finally made his move?" "Yes. Miami with the receptionist. And he's taken everything from the joint account." There was a brief pause, then the sound of papers being shuffled. "Good. That means we move immediately. Send me the messages. Every single one. And Charlotte, stay calm. The more composed you are, the stronger we are in court. Trust me," I said, "calm is all I have right now. By the time I hung up, my boutique manager, Rachel, had arrived for our usual Wednesday meeting. She took one look at me and frowned. "Charlotte, you look too calm. What's going on?" I smiled faintly. "Rachel, how do you feel about running the shop solo for the rest of the week?" She raised an eyebrow. "That bad?" "Let's just say it's the start of something big," I replied, handing her the keys. I drove straight to Mr. Collins' office, documents in hand. Together, we drafted an emergency motion to freeze any remaining shared assets, including Adrian's investments, and to request immediate financial disclosure from him. The more I thought about his arrogance taking money, thinking I'd crumble, the steadier my resolve became. That afternoon, while Adrian was probably sipping cocktails in Miami, I called our bank and canceled the credit card he had been using for months. "I'm afraid your husband has already charged a large sum this morning," the customer service agent said apologetically. "How large?" I asked. She hesitated. "Just over $4,300 for a luxury suite reservation." I allowed myself a small smile. "Cancel it." By evening, my phone lit up again, not with another smug text from Adrian, but with a barrage of angry messages. "What have you done? Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? They're asking me for another card at the front desk." I didn't reply. Mr. Collins had already advised minimal contact. Every word from Adrian would now serve as evidence of his entitlement, his temper, and his disregard for our marriage vows. As I sat in my living room, sipping tea and watching the sun dip below the rooftops, I thought about how different the day could have been. If I hadn't prepared, if I hadn't trusted my instincts months ago, I might be in bed right now, sobbing into a pillow. Instead, I was here, steady, methodical, already playing my next card. Adrian thought he had ended our marriage with a single text message. What he didn't know was that I had already written the ending, and in my version, he was going to lose far more than money. The next morning, the city outside my window was buzzing, but my mind was quieter than it had been in months. I knew the next steps wouldn't just be about money, they would be about showing Adrian that his actions had consequences. I wasn't going to scream or beg. I wasn't going to chase him to Miami or make dramatic threats. My revenge would be clean, legal, and undeniable. By 9 a.m., I was back in Mr. Collins' office, handing over printed copies of every text Adrian had sent me since he left. "Keep them chronological," Mr. Collins advised. "The more his arrogance builds in the messages, the better it looks for us." Adrian had unknowingly been digging his own grave in those texts. He mentioned starting fresh with Vanessa, taking what he deserved, and even bragged about finally being free from my little shop obsession. Every line oozed entitlement, the kind that judges tend to dislike. Mr. Collins was already moving fast. "Charlotte, we're filing for an emergency hearing tomorrow. I'm also requesting a temporary restraining order on the sale or transfer of any assets in both your names. We'll lock this down before he even realizes the scope." I nodded, signing where he indicated. "Do it. And make sure the court sees the part where he admits taking the money." Later that day, I went to the boutique to check in with Rachel. She'd been holding down the fort beautifully, and business was brisk. Gossip had already begun to spread, small-town whispers mixed with city curiosity. The word was that Adrian had run off with the pretty young receptionist, and people were more than eager to stop by, check in on me, and maybe buy a little something. I didn't mind the attention, it was good for business. By afternoon, Adrian tried to call me 3 times. I ignored him. His voicemails were a strange mix of rage and smugness. "You can't just freeze my accounts. Charlotte, you're making this ugly for no reason. You think you're smart, but I know the law too." I forwarded each voicemail to Mr. Collins. He responded within minutes, "Perfect. Keep them coming." That night, as I was preparing dinner for one, my phone pinged again. This time, it was a photo from an unknown number. Adrian and Vanessa, poolside in Miami, drinks in hand. The caption read, "Best decision we ever made." I laughed out loud. They really thought I'd crumble at the sight of their tan, smug faces? They had no idea they were sending me little gifts, pieces of evidence showing Adrian's spending, his location, and his open acknowledgement of abandoning our marriage. The next morning, I put on my best navy blue dress, the one I always wore when I wanted to feel both elegant and unshakable, and headed to the courthouse with Mr. Collins. The hearing was brief but satisfying. Adrian wasn't present, of course. The judge reviewed the texts, the bank records, and the proof of the unauthorized withdrawals. "Until this matter is settled," the judge said, "all joint assets are to remain frozen. Mr. Adrian Turner is hereby ordered to return the withdrawn funds within 14 days. Failure to do so will result in further legal action." When we walked out of the courtroom, Mr. Collins allowed himself a small smile. "That," he said, "was the first move. Now we wait for the fallout." The fallout came quicker than expected. By that evening, Adrian's tone in his messages had shifted from smug to desperate. "What did you do?" "The hotel says the card has declined again. I can't access my investment account." "Did you tell them to freeze it?" "Charlotte, I'm serious. You're making this impossible for me." I still didn't respond. Silence was my weapon now. 3 days later, I received a furious voicemail from Vanessa herself. Her voice was high-pitched and shrill. "I didn't sign up for this. Adrian said you'd be reasonable. We can't even pay for our return tickets. You're pathetic." I saved that too. In the meantime, my boutique saw a spike in sales. Customers came in with sympathetic smiles, some outright telling me, "Good for you, Charlotte. Men like that think they can just walk away scot-free." The solidarity was energizing. Mr. Collins called with more good news. "We've traced a couple of unauthorized transfers Adrian made to his personal account in the weeks before he left. That's going to work in our favor for the settlement. Keep being patient, he's already crumbling." By the end of the week, Vanessa's Instagram, yes, I checked, went from vacation selfies to passive-aggressive quotes about betrayal. It was almost too easy to guess what was happening. The money was running out, the fantasy was cracking, and the tropical glow was fading fast. One evening, as I was closing up the boutique, Adrian's mother, Margaret, came in. She looked embarrassed but determined. "Charlotte," she began, "I wanted to say, I didn't realize what my son was capable of. I'm sorry I ever doubted you." I studied her face for a moment before nodding. "Thank you, Margaret. That means more than you think." She sighed. "You know, enabling him all these years. I see now that I was part of the problem." It was the first time anyone in his family had admitted such a thing. Another quiet victory. By the time the 2 weeks were up, Adrian hadn't returned the money as ordered. That meant the next phase could begin seizing assets in his name to cover the amount. Mr. Collins handled the paperwork while I focused on running the boutique. One afternoon, I received a final flurry of texts from Adrian. They were angry, pleading, and almost pitiful. "You've ruined me. I can't believe you'd do this to me. You'll regret this." I read them, then deleted them without replying. Because here's what Adrian never understood, I wasn't just reacting to what he did last week. I had been preparing for this exact outcome for months. Every legal move, every financial safeguard, every piece of evidence, it was all ready before he ever pressed send on that first cruel text message. And now, the man who thought he'd humiliate me was stranded, broke, and facing a legal storm he couldn't charm his way out of. By the time 3 months had passed, Adrian was no longer the smug man who had left me via text with a suitcase full of arrogance. He was a shadow of himself, and not in the poetic, tragic way. His hair looked thinner, his clothes less tailored, and that effortless swagger he once had was replaced by the restless, darting glances of a man who had been cornered. The court proceedings moved swiftly. Every attempt he made to challenge the freeze on our assets failed. Mr. Collins presented the paper trail of his financial misconduct, unauthorized transfers, luxury charges for his trip with Vanessa, and the audacity of draining our joint account right before filing for divorce. The judge didn't have patience for him. "Mr. Turner," the judge said sternly, "your behavior has been reckless, dishonest, and exploitative. You will not walk away from this marriage without compensating your spouse for the damages you have caused." Hearing those words was a quiet satisfaction I didn't need to flaunt. I didn't smirk, I didn't gloat, I simply sat there, my hands folded neatly in my lap, knowing this was exactly where I had aimed my arrow months ago. Meanwhile, my boutique was flourishing in ways I couldn't have predicted. The local gossip had transformed into genuine support. Women came into my shop telling me my story had inspired them to start putting money aside, to pay more attention to signs of trouble in their own relationships, to protect themselves. One Saturday afternoon, a customer walked in, hesitated by the door, and then stepped toward me with a small smile. It was Vanessa. I almost didn't recognize her without the heavy makeup and manicured perfection she'd worn in Miami photos. "Charlotte," she said softly. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I wanted to say something." I tilted my head, watching her carefully. "Go on." She glanced down at her hands. "I left him. A few weeks ago. It wasn't what I thought it would be. And I've been following your boutique's page. You've done something incredible here. You made me realize I don't have to depend on anyone either. I'm starting my own business." For a moment, I considered ignoring her, brushing her off as just another chapter in Adrian's mess. But there was something in her voice, a sincerity I didn't expect. "Good for you," I finally said. "Build something for yourself. And protect it." She smiled faintly, nodded, and left. No apology, no drawn-out conversation, just a strange, quiet understanding between two women who had learned very different lessons from the same man. Margaret, Adrian's mother, became an occasional visitor to the boutique too. She would stop by with fresh flowers, sometimes browsing the racks, sometimes just chatting over tea. "You taught me something I didn't want to learn," she admitted once. "Sometimes, loving someone means not excusing their behavior." By the final settlement, Adrian had lost more than he probably thought possible. The court awarded me full ownership of our marital home, a lump sum to replace the money he'd stolen, and a portion of his remaining investments to cover legal fees and damages. He kept his car and a small savings account, and that was about it. A few weeks later, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Adrian had been let go from his job. The scandal, the financial trouble, and his erratic behavior had caught up to him. He tried freelancing but struggled. Apparently, Vanessa's departure had left him isolated, without even the illusion of a partner in his chaos. I didn't celebrate his downfall in public. That wasn't the point. The point was that I had rebuilt my life stronger, safer, and more successfully than before. I expanded the boutique into the space next door, hired 2 more employees, and started shipping orders nationwide. One evening, as I was closing up, I looked at a small frame on my office shelf. Inside was a printout of the very first text Adrian sent that morning he left me. "Charlotte, I'm leaving you. Don't contact me. I've taken my share of the money." It wasn't there to remind me of the pain. It was there to remind me of the strength I had found in myself, the foresight that had saved me, and the lesson that sometimes the best revenge isn't loud or messy, it's simply thriving in a life someone thought they could take from you. When I finally locked up that night, the street outside was warm and buzzing with life. My story was no longer about Adrian or what he had done to me. It was about the life I had claimed for myself and the quiet victories that had piled up like treasures no one could steal. And in that moment, I knew. He had no idea what was coming, and by the time he found out, it was far too late. Moral lesson. Life has a way of revealing the truth about people, and sometimes that truth shatters the image you once held of them. But betrayal, while painful, can also be a powerful teacher. It teaches you to listen to your instincts, to prepare quietly, and to protect what you've built. Revenge doesn't always have to be fueled by anger. Sometimes it's as simple as living well, standing tall, and refusing to be broken. In my case, the strength came from planning ahead, trusting my intuition when something felt wrong, and refusing to let someone else's selfish choices define my future. People who wrong you often expect chaos, tears, and desperation. But when they're met with calm, calculated action instead, it dismantles their control completely. Never underestimate the power of silence, patience, and preparation. And never let anyone convince you that what you've built is small or insignificant, because those things might be the very foundation that saves you one day. So, to everyone watching, protect your peace, your work, and your future. If someone tries to take them from you, let your comeback be the story they'll never forget. Don't forget to like, share, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more.